Good to go? Okay. Hello, I am Anna Froling, a member of LWV Rochester. I would like to welcome all of you tonight, the candidates, the audience, and those viewing at a later time, to this forum sponsored by the League of Women Voters Rochester. We'd also like to thank our generous partners tonight's forum, the Rochester Post-Bulletin, the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce, and the Rochester Public Library for their help. The League of Women Voters is a volunteer organization active at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we as a league do study and take stands on issues, we never endorse or oppose political parties or candidates. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of LWV Rochester or any partner or sponsor of this forum, and the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. It is our purpose in sponsoring this forum to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss face-to-face issues that are important to you. Tonight's questions have come from LWV Rochester, the Post-Bulletin, and the Chamber of Commerce, and members of our audience. You are welcome to submit as many written questions for candidates as you like. Just hold up the cards as you finish them, and a league volunteer will collect them throughout the forum. If you are watching the live stream, you may email questions to lwvrochester@lwvmn.org. Tonight's volunteers who are managing the questions are League volunteers. Questions that are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature will not be used. Given our format, our questions must relate to all the candidates. Questions that fall in the same general area or which have been addressed in the opening statements may be consolidated to allow the moderator to cover as many topics as possible in the time allotted. We appreciate questions that are forward-looking rather than a review of past issues. If the answer was unclear to you, feel free to submit a follow-up question or ask the candidate after the forum. Cards become the property of the League of Women Voters Rochester. As there is never enough time to cover all the issues in a limited time and settings such as this, if your questions are not addressed tonight, please feel free to contact the candidate directly. You can find the candidate's contact information online at vote411.org or the Minnesota Secretary of State site. We'd like to thank all the candidates for running for office, for offering to serve your community, and for the enormous time, dedication, and commitment it takes that running and serving demand. We encourage our members as individuals, as we encourage each of you to get involved in your community and the political party of your choice. Welcome to tonight's forum, which features the candidates for Rochester City Council, Ward 3. Candidates for this seat are Vangie Castro and Norman Wahl. Welcome. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to offer an opening statement. The candidates will then respond in turn to questions provided by LWV Rochester and this evening's partners and by the audience. Candidates will have 75 seconds each to answer. The candidates will then have 2 minutes each to make a closing statement. It isn't necessary to use the entire time for your answer, but please finish your sentence when your time is up. We would like to cover as many questions as possible. Each candidate also has three 30-second rebuttal cards. These can be used at any point after each candidate has answered the question. Only one rebuttal card may be used per question. Please put the card in the basket after you have used it. I would like to remind the audience to remain quiet during the forum. Hold your applause until the end of the forum and to turn off all electronic devices. Timekeepers tonight are LWV Rochester member Eric Boldall and Winona State student Camille Plague. Questions will be screened by LWV Rochester Kathy Magerline and Dee Voldal. Asking questions will be Randy Peterson from the Post-Bulletin and Jonathan Kroll from the Chamber of Commerce. We now will hear the opening statements from each candidate. Candidates, you will each have 2 minutes to answer to speak. And I have to find out. And candidate Castro, you go first.
Good evening. Thank you, League of Women Voters, Rochester Public Library, the Post-Bulletin, and the Rochester Chamber of Commerce for hosting tonight's event. Hello, Randy, Anna, and Jonathan. My name is Vangie Castro, and I'm running for City Council Ward 3. If you don't know where Ward 3 is, it is in the northwest quadrant of Rochester. It's a fast-growing area with a mix of single-family homes, workforce housing, townhomes, large box stores, and lots of banks. It has Northern Hills Golf Course. It's a diverse area with a diverse resident population with multiple different needs and issues, and I want to represent this area. With honesty, transparency, and being a good steward of the land and finances, I believe that affordability, accessibility, and good governance are the foundations to creating a healthy and vibrant community for us all. I care deeply about this community that I live and work in. I'm currently working as a nonprofit, which allows me to be on the ground, staying connected and engaged on local issues. I'm also on the Olmsted County Human Rights Commission, and I'm a golfer. So I try to be both civically and socially engaged in the community. As a community organizer, human rights advocate, and local leader, I'm well equipped to bring issues to the City Council that truly affect everyday people who live and work in Rochester. So many people are being left out of our political discussion, and I want to make sure I represent all voters and voices in Ward 3 and the City of Rochester. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Wahl?
And with Vangie, I thank all the sponsors for tonight's event. I am honored to be among those who are considered for leadership in Rochester. I've been honored with positions of leadership in the past, and I hope to use the skills that have been honed over a lifetime and in those positions to bring prudent and effective leadership to Rochester. I have three priorities. I want to ensure that we bring the voice of Ward 3 to the council. Sometimes I think that we speak too much and listen too little. I have talked with probably 3,000 or 4,000 people in our ward already, and I hope that I can continue to be a good voice for Ward 3. As a fiscal conservative, I intend to be careful with money that is already entrusted to the City of Rochester. I am committed to a program that will enable budget growth in the same proportion as the City of Rochester grows. We need to be careful that we do not tax people out of their homes and out of their businesses. And the third priority is attending to public safety. We have a great police chief who has put together a good force. He is seeking change. I think there will be more changes. I had an opportunity to spend 4.5 hours with the fire chief this summer, and it is clear that he understands the challenges of our day, and his greatest joy is in working with the effective crews that are assembled to protect our city, as well lots of other safety things, whether it is lighting or EMT. I'm one committed to my responsibility. I will tirelessly work with the ward and seek to draw people together for the common good.
Thank you, Candidate Wahl. Now on to our questions. And Candidate Wahl, you'll be first, and then followed by Candidate Castro, and we'll go back and forth that way. And the first question comes from the League of Women Voters, and the question is, there is a general awareness that the county and the City of Rochester do not collaborate well. What could be done to improve coordination and collaboration between them and other local governments?
Since I have served on neither the city nor the county boards, I don't know that to be the case, that there's a lack of good collaboration. The city and the county are charged with separate duties, though there is some intersection, particularly in roads. We share citizenry. About 73% of the people of Olmsted County live in Rochester. The leadership of both city and county are housed in the same building. If there are avenues of communication that need to be opened up, it seems to me it should be fairly easy to establish personal relationships so that we can collaborate well. Both the city and the county have as their goal serving well the citizens of our county and of our city.
Thank you, Candidate Wahl. Candidate Castro?
Anna, can you ask that question again? Thank you.
Yes, I will. There is a general awareness that the county and the city of Rochester do not collaborate well. What could be done to improve coordination and collaboration between them and other local governments?
Well, currently I am the chair of the Human Rights Commission for Olmsted County, so I already have a relationship with many of the county commissioners. If you're also aware of what's coming up in the general election, many of the county commissioners are also up for re-election, so that is an opportunity for new folks who are coming into leadership to be able to build relationships with each other. The interconnectedness of the city and county, of course, Norman points out roads, but also health and human services, which addresses housing. And affordable housing is a huge issue that will need collaboration between the city and the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be from the Rochester Post-Bulletin, and candidate Castro, you'll be first, and then candidate Wahl.
The current Ward 3 candidate is stepping down as the City Council's most senior member. What challenges do you see in replacing the Council's most experienced member, and how do you plan to address them?
I've worked with Nick Campion for a long time in the various roles that I've had in the city, lobbying him and working with him on different policies and issues. He's really great with data. He's a huge data decision maker. And of course, he's been on the council the longest. So I'm not looking to fill his shoes at all. I want to be able to represent Ward 3, which has been redistricted, which looks different from the ward that Nick was representing. So the challenge would be getting up to speed as a new city council person. But I am up to that challenge, and I'm willing to hit the ground running come June 1st, January 1st.
Thank you, candidate Castro. Candidate Wahl?
I'm not sure that anybody can actually replace someone, but you take the seat on the council and do the very best you can. Nick and I have worked together. I'm happy to say that I have his endorsement. I have appreciated a great deal the intelligence and the diligence that he brings to the job. That has attracted me to him and to working with him. So I would intend to use a guy like Nick as a sounding board, as a source of information, as a source of where to go get information. We have a good relationship. I hope that if elected, I could stand in his place of being a good, prudent, and hard-working leader of Rochester.
Thank you, candidate Wahl. And now we will move on to the chamber question, and Jonathan Krull, and this will be candidate Castro, candidate Wahl, and then candidate Castro. Thank you.
What is your view on the current business environment here in Rochester? And as a member of the City Council, how would you work to ensure that Rochester is a place for businesses to grow and thrive?
Well, the current business environment in Rochester is as varied as there are wards and there are people. Some businesses are thriving, some businesses are not thriving. We find that there are internet businesses that are doing very well as small businesses. We find that existing businesses are being forced out of downtown because of increased costs, including property taxes. Certainly, one of the things that the city can do is in the way of property taxes and ensuring that small business owners are not forced out of businesses that they have labored for decades, maybe only 2 years, to try and find viability in a very challenging environment. Small business is key for the growth of the community. I hope that we can continue to attract small businesses. We have a very attractive town. There was a report not long ago about the 12 new businesses that were opening downtown. So there is an environment that will provide good access, I think, to success.
Thank you. Candidate Castro?
We're a growing city with the Destination Medical Center. We are working really hard to attract lots of diverse businesses, small businesses, large corporations, to diversify the ability to have varied opportunities for workforce here in Rochester. We also just received the Bloomberg grant to provide opportunities for minority business owners or minority folks in construction. And Ready has also been working to provide opportunities and to work with minority-owned businesses. So yes, Rochester is really working hard to be attractive to different businesses. And as Norman has pointed out, some businesses will open, some businesses will close. That's just the nature of our economy and capitalism.
Thank you, Candidate Castro. Next question, next several questions will come from the audience, and this question will go to Candidate Castro first and then Candidate Wahl. This question is on childcare. Do you believe the lack of affordable childcare is impacting Rochester's available workforce? If so, how would you address this issue?
Yes, it is. A lack of childcare does make it difficult for us to have a vibrant workforce, especially since we have a lot of young families, young professionals, folks who are starting families, and this is something that a lot of nonprofits are working on to solve. Look at, with private and public partnerships to find ways to fill the gaps of childcare, but that's just an issue that we're going to have to try to work together to find solutions for. It is a huge issue that is really happening, and so.
Thank you. Candidate Wahl?
Yes, it is a huge issue. A couple of weeks ago, visiting with a man in his driveway, and he said, you actually have 4 voters in this household because my son and his wife are living here. They have 3 kids that they're trying to pay child care for, and they can't afford a home. And I've talked to young people. My own daughter got done paying with child care a few years ago. It takes a huge chunk of one's income to pay for 1 or 2 children, especially if they're infants, and the increased fees for the smaller children. This is certainly a problem that Rochester is needing to address, as well as all big cities, maybe small cities as well. We need to encourage child care providers. There are some obstacles to being child care providers in the way of regulations these days that perhaps could alleviate some of the difficulty.
Thank you. Now, the last question was from the in-person audience. This one will be from an online question, and this will be Candidate Wahl first and then Candidate Castro. The library has taken on some non-traditional roles, such as staffing the day center during COVID. Going forward, would you support increased funding to support the library in this important work?
I think that we need to establish what the library is and what it should be. The library cannot be all things to all people. Are we actually going to ask the library to perform functions and services for which the employees are not trained? Are we going to ask the library to host things that can be hosted in other places? This would be a perfect meeting. We have a facility across the street that sits mostly empty tonight, I am sure. I'm not sure that the library needs meeting rooms devoted to meetings when we have other places that can accomplish that. Are we actually going to ask the library to be a warming center when there are people who should be trained in that, so that both the clients of the warming center and that employees can be safe? So I think that the city and the library need to drill down as to what services are actually needed in a library. We will never be a place full of old, dusty books again, but it is a place of information sharing and communication first and foremost.
Thank you, Candidate Wahl. Candidate Castro?
I fully support fully funding the library. They provide so many services that are free to this community. Of course, our taxes pay for it, but it allows for a third space where a lot of folks can come and meet. It's also a cost-effective way to provide digital access to folks who are economically challenged. It's a safe environment. It provides a lot of resources. I don't know why we couldn't utilize the library to provide more services for the city of Rochester.
Thank you. Another question, and this is from the in-person audience, and this is about the city council process. And candidate Castro, you'll answer first, and then candidate Wahl. What improvements would you recommend in the city council process?
Not really understanding what that, like, as a city council member making decisions on policy?
This is from the audience, sorry, I can't,
I need some clarification. The city council process of making decisions for the city, I can answer that. So what the city council does is to ensure that they are taking the money that they are receiving from taxes to provide services to people here in Rochester. That is better sewers and sidewalks and streetlights, and making sure that parking is regulated and building is regulated. We are constantly improving the ways that we make the decision-making process, I think, at the city council level. There's always room for improvement, but there are 7 people on that city council that work together to make decisions, and I would hope that they have diverse thoughts, that they can come together to make sure they have solutions for very difficult problems that face the city.
Thank you. Candidate Wahl.
There are at least a couple of city council members who are seated in the audience tonight who could probably comment well on the process that is used by our city council. I understand that some Monday evening decisions are actually made on Tuesday morning. That's quite a process. I understand that the council members get hundreds of pages of material to examine many days in advance of the meeting, and have an opportunity then to coordinate with city staff questions and extra information that will allow for better decision making when it comes to Monday study sessions or Monday evening into Tuesday morning meetings to make decisions on policy. Whether that process can be streamlined in any way so that people are continually fresh and ready to engage in decision-making. Maybe your best decisions are not made at 12:15 a.m. as opposed to 7:15 p.m.
Thank you. Our next question also comes from in-person audience, and this is candidate Wahl first and candidate Castro. DMC. What specific changes would you like to see in the DMC process?
In the process, I would like a greater voice of Rochester heard, although I'm happy that both the mayor and the at-large councilpersons sit on the DMC board. I think that the story of DMC needs to be told better than it currently is. For instance, DMC has redeveloped 14 surface parking lots in downtown Rochester. That, prior to redevelopment, were returning $685,000 annually in property tax to the city. Upon redevelopment, $7 million annually. I don't think people know that. I think people think that we're only investing in the downtown. I don't think people know that the infrastructure, the sewers over by St. Mary's Hospital were built in the 1950s. And even if it were not for DMC, something would have to be done to allow modern buildings to function. So using DMC money actually frees up some infrastructure money that then can be spread out over the 6 wards. So certainly telling the story of DMC in a fresh way so that people know that we benefit would be helpful.
Thank you. Candidate Castro?
Yeah, I agree with what Norman said about the DMC process. Well, not all of it. I'm just that a lot of people don't understand how the process works. On Monday, the DMC actually gave their proposal of their budget for the year, not actually looking for a vote, but letting the city council know this is what they're looking for. The city council has a huge place in deciding how DMC is going to be spending that money. And I don't think what a lot of people understand is that they think DMC is making all these decisions outside of the city council purview. We are supposed to be working together to ensuring that it fulfills the strategic plan of the city and that we're moving into the direction of trying to create Rochester into a destination, a global destination for health and wellness. Can the process be better? Any process can always be improved, but I think what it really comes down to is making sure that City Council is asking the right questions and making decisions coming from a place that is best for the city.
Thank you. Now we are going to go to League of Women voter question and Post Bulletin and Chamber. So this is, and Candidate Castro, you'll go first, and then Candidate Wahl. The City Council has approved the Rochester Energy Commission proposal to reduce emissions citywide by 50% by 2030. How can this be accomplished?
RPU's 100% renewable energy by 2030 was proposed in 2015. So it's been something that they've been working on with a lot of the state federal money to help offset some of the costs to be able to address those issues. Infrastructure is always an issue, making sure that we have the infrastructure to move towards that direction, but we are working in that, we're working that way. And if this is something that RPU says that they are on board with and had proposed to the city that they will be ready in 2030, I expect that they will be. But if not, that's something that we'll have to make sure that we're providing the best oversight. And I do support that. I think if we believe in in the current climate crisis, this is something that we should have been doing years and years ago.
Thank you. Candidate Wahl?
The commitment to reducing emissions by 2030 has already been made by the council and by RPU. The fact is that the city council is not charged with dreaming up solutions. The city council is charged with having people in place who are capable of dreaming up solutions. And so we are thankful for an energy commission. We are thankful for professionals like those at RPU that can assist us on our journey toward 2030.
Thank you. Randy Peterson from the Post Bulletin. And Candidate Wahl, you'll be first, and then Candidate Castro.
Affordable housing projects often face pushback from neighbors who often cite concerns about increased density and public safety. How should such concerns be balanced with the city's goal of creating more affordable housing?
That's a very effective question for Ward 3 that has seen an explosion of apartments and multifamily dwellings from the Hy-Vee West Circle Drive area to north of Costco to the east of 52 and north of 65, and now to 6 huge buildings that are just down the street from Overland Elementary. And as I have knocked on doors, I have heard some pushback from neighbors who somehow feel like they were in the dark, even though I'm certain public meetings were held, that we need to be redundant in the information that we offer to neighborhoods so that they are not surprised when they see these huge multi-family units going up. We need to be more dense in Rochester. We need to provide, especially more toward downtown, livability for professionals who can walk to places. We need to have those multi-family units on heavily traveled corridors so that they have access to public transportation and hopefully within walking distance of retail, especially food.
Thank you. Candidate Castro?
So one of the solutions of making sure that we are lessening pollution in the downtown area is creating more infill. It's an economical use of existing infrastructure. It's a remedy for urban sprawl. And the idea of that creating more affordable housing will create a public safety issue is a myth. And that's something that also the city really needs to do a little more education on with folks when we're talking about what affordable housing looks like. It's not about putting poor people into housing projects, and I think that's what we have to really think about when we are resistant to creating more housing. We need more housing in the city of Rochester, and we have to find ways to provide housing. We will have a 17,000 worker shortage in 10 or 20 years, and we need to be able to put them somewhere.
Thank you. Our next question will be from the chamber, and Jonathan Krull.
On the topic of the workforce shortage, with the unemployment rate at historic lows, what do you view as the largest draw for prospective talent here in Rochester? As a city, what can Rochester do to be a destination for prospective talent?
I would like to consider myself as a prospective talent. When I came here 12 years ago as a young professional, what drew me here is opportunity, the ability to be able to make a difference in my community. The Mayo Clinic is a great draw for many people. Are there things for young professionals to do? More so now than they were 12 years ago. We can do more to be able to retain the young people that live here and leave and don't want to come back. So we have to find a way to be able to attract them or to keep them here or to keep the young professionals and diverse talent that we currently have. And that's something that we have to think about. It's about retention. And you have retention, then you'll have attraction.
Thank you. Candidate Wahl.
That's a very apropos question, Randy, given an article in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune today, which reported that the Education Service pre-ply, I want to get this right, ranked Rochester as the 6th best small college city in the country. Not Minnesota, but in the country. Oh. And their metrics were economic opportunities, cost of living, and social environment. So I think those of us who live here often don't give Rochester the credit that we already have going on in this city to attract young professionals. At least one pre-ply using outside metrics would say that we are already doing very well in the way of attracting young people. I hope that perhaps that word can get out even more so that people are attracted to our city both as college students and as workers.
Thank you. This question will, and candidate Wahl, you'll be first, and then candidate Castro. This question comes from online, and it's about the library. Since many people rely on computer access from our library, would you support stronger funding of the library and the computer resources it provides?
It seems to me that communication is a part of the library's challenge and their call to serve in the city of Rochester. So yes, I think computers are essential to virtually everything that we do these days, including tracking your inoculations, ordering things, communicating with people. Without computer access, people really fall into a hole. So yes, I would support good communication, good internet sharing in the library amongst the people of the city of Rochester.
Thank you. Candidate Castro?
Yes, I would support investing more money into providing more digital access to folks here in our community. The library is a great place for people who are young entrepreneurs or low income to find jobs and using the internet. And from what we've learned during the pandemic, that there is a huge digital divide. But it's also a great opportunity to work with the county to talk about maybe creating the internet as a public utility.
Thank you. Our next question, we're going to try to get a series of League of Women Voter, Chamber, and Post Bulletin, and then we'll be finishing up. This comes from the League of Women Voters. The 2020 census showed the BIPOC community represents a significant and growing percent of 26.8% of our city population. How can the city improve the participation on boards, commissions, and among staff? And Candidate Castro, you go first, and then Candidate Wahl.
Well, this is something that I've been working on for several years from when I was on working with the Diversity Council. We had a program that provided training for folks, people with diverse backgrounds who represented minority communities, to be able to understand what it meant to sit on boards and commissions. And obviously, myself included, has also encouraged people, both by being on boards and commissions and being a chair. I think representation matters. I think the lack of the fact that we don't have more BIPOC folks on boards and commissions or in leadership positions makes it really difficult for BIPOC people to think that they can even be on boards and commissions or on the city council or on the commission or on school board.
Thank you. Candidate Wahl.
As pastor of Bethel Lutheran Church, I was in charge of doing a lot of the hiring of people, and I am happy to say that in looking for the very best candidates for a few of the positions there, at least 3 of them, they were people of color. And they provided immense good to our congregation, continue still to do immense good. So I would advocate lifting up the very best, that we work with every individual so that we can raise people into positions of leadership, whether that be in the business community or whether that be in the government.
Thank you. Next question from the Post Bulletin.
The city's proposed active transportation plan would create a vision to provide pedestrian and bicycle network that connects major destinations within the city. Do you support the effort to grow the city's bike and pedestrian network?
I would support that pedestrian and bike network as it demonstrably offers opportunities for people to get where they need to go in a reasonable time, a reasonable space. It's probably it's outside of a few people from where I live to expect that they're going to walk downtown many miles. That's not going to happen. Are they going to bike downtown? Oh, they might some days if they want a good bike ride. It's not close. You can get there, whether you're going to do that in the middle of the winter at 10 below zero. So I would have limited support. I would have more support for a core downtown with the increased infill, the housing, that would allow us to be more compact. Recently spent some time in some European cities, saw all kinds of bikers and all kinds of walkers, but they were in a concentrated area of the downtown areas.
Thank you. Candidate Castro?
Randy, can you ask that question again?
The city's proposed active transportation plan would create a vision to provide a pedestrian and bicycle network that connects major destinations within the city. Do you support the effort to grow the city's bike and pedestrian network?
Yes, I do support the city's plan to grow the bike and pedestrian network because a bikeable and walkable city is a safer city. If we want to address public safety, we have to make sure that the city is also safe for bicyclists and pedestrians. And that's a huge issue that people talk about all the time, especially folks who do ride bikes. But I think what's important is that the city is a friendly city, an attractive city, and a walkable city.
Thank you. And next question from the chamber, and candidate Castro, you'll go first, and then candidate Wahl.
What is a priority that you believe is essential to the financial stability of Rochester moving forward, and what strategies do you recommend to encourage that potential stability in future community development?
I think what's important is that we, as a city, currently we are growing and will continue to grow as a city. We need to ensure that we are good stewards of the monies that are coming in with the idea of all the redevelopment that we're doing. Making sure that we revitalize parts of the city that we think are in decline, and not in a way that is exploitive or will push people out, but in a way that makes sure that the city is attractive for folks who are, that we want to attract a diverse workforce. And I think that what we don't realize is that having a diverse community will create a more thriving, healthy, financially healthy city. And if we have to understand that as residents, that if we want our city to continue to grow and we don't want the city to die, we need to invest in it, and that means that we have to spend money.
Thank you. Candidate Wahl.
As I said in my opening, one of my priorities would be to try and ensure that city budget growth does not exceed the rate growth of the city of Rochester. When I talk to the people of Ward 3, taxes are so high on their minds and the affordability of living in Rochester. We cannot overly burden homes and businesses. And so a priority would be to try to keep growth of the budget in check. We need to be careful looking at new initiatives so that we spend wisely, but I think we also have to sharpen pencils and even erasers, use them to look at existing programs to see what is no longer effective for Rochester so that we can save money in those ways.
Thank you. That concludes the question portion of our forum. We will now hear the closing statements from each candidate. Candidates, you will have 2 minutes to speak. And we begin with candidate Wahl.
I'm keenly aware of what a privilege it is to sit here tonight and what a blessing it is. In my faith tradition, blessings are not ends unto themselves, but they are to be used as a blessing for others. And so it is that I would choose to be a blessing to others by using whatever talents and time that I have in order to represent not just Ward 3, but the entire city of Rochester. I am committed, I am loyal. I would love to make this a better place to be, along with the companions, the colleagues on the city council and the staff and the commissions and boards that all work together to make this a better place. When visiting with the people of Ward 3 this summer, one guy sat me down on his porch, and he asked a lot of probing questions about what it means to be a city council member, playing the devil's advocate. He actually made my resolve stronger, that I could use whatever I have in order to serve the people. We live in a great city. Like all cities, we have challenges. Rochester has always had challenges. It always will have challenges. But we also have the people and the resources to meet those challenges. Division solves nothing. Honoring each person with dignity so that we might work together, draw together as one, that is a recipe for success and moving forward.
Thank you. Candidate Castro?
So I am a product of the public school system, and I worked full-time as I finished my college education. At the same time, I also did an internship at my last year at university. I'm an immigrant. I did the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps thing. I have to strive for excellence in my professional career to be taken seriously, which means I understand the difficulty of being successful in a world that values productivity and output, especially when you struggle with mental health issues and dealing with historical trauma. The last few years have been difficult for all of us, individuals, families, small businesses. We went through it together. It's important we have leaders who see us and hear us and is one of us. I lost my job during the pandemic and struggled to pay bills and rent, so I get it. I understand your concerns. Political candidates and elected officials should reflect all of us, our community, real people who are figuring out where our place is in the political process. That good, reasonable, honest, and kind people can and should be elected officials. People who don't always have the right connections or the financial backing to run a winning campaign. We should be able to run for office, and our economic status, our job titles, or our lack of connections to businesses and builders shouldn't keep us from being at the decision-making table. Nonprofit workers, like myself, are perfectly adept at running government because we are good stewards of public funds, and we serve everyone, especially the marginalized and most underserved. We know when we serve the least of us, we all do better. We all thrive. So I'm one of you. I'm your friend, your neighbor, your coworker. I'm the person who's worked for you and fought for you in this community for over 12 years because I believe in the goodness and kindness of this community that wants better for all of us. And I will fight for you, and I hope you vote for me. So thank you, and you can learn more about me at VangieCastro.com.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. Before we go on to their next forum, we'll have a short break, but I need to make closing comments first. I would like to thank each of the candidates for participating in tonight's forum. Thank you for your service to the community and for your willingness to participate in the democratic process by running for office. I would like to remind you that the reviews expressed in the forum tonight were those of the candidates, not LWV Rochester or any partner or sponsor of the forum. LWV posts complete, unedited recordings of these forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. Thank you to our partners, the Rochester Area Chamber of Commerce, the Rochester Post-Bulletin, and the Rochester Public Library. Remember that Election Day is November 8th. Get out and vote. If you have a question about your polling place, would like to see your sample ballot, or learn more about the candidates, visit vote411.org. Please note your polling place may have changed due to redistricting. Election information is available on the brochures that were on your seats when you came in, and also Vote 411 information. We thank you all for coming tonight, and have a good evening.